Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer.
The father of the atomic bomb.
That's right.
Yeah.
And we've got excerpts from a biography of Oppenheimer as well as some of his own writings.
It's going to be interesting to dive into these sources and really try to understand this guy.
This complex figure.
Absolutely.
I think the thing that I'm most fascinated by is the moral dilemmas that he faced.
Yeah, it's almost Shakespearean when you think about it.
Oh, absolutely.
This man.
A man who is both celebrated and scrutinized.
Yeah, and ultimately brought down by the very forces that he helped unleash.
It's really a story full of triumphs and tragedies.
So many questions.
Yeah.
About the role of scientists in society, about the dangers of political pressure and the ethical dilemmas of powerful technology.
And one quote that I read really could have sent chills down my spine. He said, "In some sort of crude sense, which no vulgarity, no humor, no overstatement can quite extinguish, the physicists have known sin, and this is a knowledge which they cannot lose."
Wow.
I mean, to think about the weight of what he went through, the weight of that knowledge.
Yeah, to understand that weight, I think we need to go back to the beginning.
To his childhood.
Yeah.
This guy was a prodigy from day one.
His intellectual curiosity was off the charts.
I was reading an anecdote where, as a kid, he found it no fun to turn the pages of a book and say, yes, of course I know that.
Can you imagine?
That's wild.
He just knew.
Yeah.
He already grasped the concept so quickly.
It makes you wonder if that kind of intense intellect can also be a burden.
Yeah, there are probably downsides to that as well.
But he wasn't just a science nerd, though, right?
No.
I mean, he was also drawn to poetry and literature.
He wasn't just defined by his scientific achievements. He had this deep appreciation for the arts and humanities.
Yeah, and that's what makes him so interesting.
A man of contradictions. A brilliant scientist who also found solace and meaning in the world of poetry.
Let's move on then to his time in Europe.
Okay.
It seems like that was really a crucial period for both his personal and intellectual development.
He was studying physics over there, and that's when he encountered leading physicists like Niels Bohr and Paul Dirac.
Think about that. He's rubbing shoulders with the giants of physics.
That must have been such a stimulating environment for him.
But it wasn't all sunshine and roses, though.
Right. He also faced internal struggles during this period.
Yeah, it was during that time that I guess he had some mental health issues and even explored psychoanalysis.
That's a side of him we don't hear about very often.
Yeah, the vulnerability behind the genius.
Yeah, it humanizes him.
It does.
Makes him relatable.
There's this intriguing detail about an awakening that he experienced in Corsica.
Yeah, he describes it as a transformative moment in his life, a great and lasting part of his life.
But we don't know any specifics about what happened.
Right, there's no details.
Kind of a missing piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and this transformation kind of coincided with a growing awareness of what was going on in the political landscape.
Right, the 1930s, a time of great upheaval.
The Great Depression.
The rise of fascism.
Yeah.
And that's when we see his own political awakening starting to happen.
Yeah, he became politically active.
Yeah.
And,
I'm seeing here that he was involved in supporting the Spanish Republic.
Yes.
Even donating to the cause.
And through channels linked to the Communist Party.
Yeah, and those political affiliations would later come back to haunt him during the McCarthy era.
It's almost as if the seeds of his later downfall
Yeah.
were sown during this time.
And speaking of downfall,
Yeah.
I guess we have to talk about the Manhattan Project.
Oh, yeah, the elephant in the room.
How does this politically active academic become the scientific director of one of the most significant wartime projects in history?
That is quite a transition.
And from what I'm reading here, he excelled in this role.
Yeah, he became a charismatic leader. He was
Yeah.
really able to inspire and motivate.
A team of brilliant scientists.
Yes.
Yeah, it says here that he was present for all the major breakthroughs.
Always listening intently to discussions,
Yeah.
guiding the process, fostering a sense of direct participation from everyone.
So he wasn't just a figurehead.
No, he was in the trenches with them.
Yeah.
Pushing his team towards this ultimate goal.
But then comes the aftermath.
Uh-oh.
The bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Right.
Events that shook the world and forced Oppenheimer to confront the devastating consequences of his work.
You know, it's fascinating how Oppenheimer's initial response to the bombings was a mix of awe and detachment.
Right.
Like, there's that story, almost mythical now, after the Trinity test, the first detonation of an atomic bomb. He quoted the Bhagavad Gita, saying, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Yeah, it's a chilling quote.
Chilling and powerful, but
But I've heard that it might not be entirely accurate.
That's right. He actually clarified this years later, stating that what really went through his mind at that moment was, it worked. Yeah, it seems like his initial focus was on the scientific achievement, the fact that they had actually created this incredibly powerful weapon.
Like he was caught up in the sheer magnitude of it.
Right.
Wow.
And then the human cost started to sink in.
Right.
And you can see his perspective shifting as the devastation of Hiroshima and Nagasaki became clear.
Yeah, he became an advocate for international control of atomic weapons.
Yeah.
And even expressed deep regret for the decision to bomb Japan.
He even said that it was the wrong decision to bomb an enemy which was essentially defeated.
What a heavy burden to carry.
Yeah.
Knowing that he played such a central role in creating such a destructive force.
And this brings us to the security hearing of 1954.
Oh, yeah.
A pivotal moment in Oppenheimer's life.
You mentioned earlier how his political affiliations would come back to haunt him.
This is where it all came to a head.
It was fueled by Cold War paranoia and personal vendettas, right? I'm seeing here that Lewis Strauss, a former chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission, seems to have played a key role in Oppenheimer's downfall.
Strauss had his own vision for nuclear weapons development, particularly the hydrogen bomb, which Oppenheimer opposed.
On moral and strategic grounds.
Yes. And this opposition made Oppenheimer a target for those who viewed any hesitation towards developing more powerful weapons as disloyalty during the Cold War.
So Strauss used his influence to orchestrate this hearing.
Pushing this narrative that Oppenheimer's past associations with communists made him a security risk.
So was there any real evidence of actual disloyalty or espionage?
Well, he did have connections with people who were members of the Communist Party, but there's no evidence suggesting that he ever officially joined the party himself.
But during the McCarthy era, even the slightest hint of communist sympathy was enough to destroy a person's career.
It was a very different time.
A chilling reminder of how fear and suspicion can run rampant.
Yeah.
What about the Chevalier incident? That seemed to play a significant role in the hearing as well.
It adds another layer of complexity to this whole saga.
So in 1943, Oppenheimer's friend, Håkon Chevalier, approached him about the possibility of sharing information with the Soviets.
It's interesting.
So Oppenheimer was being asked to spy.
Well, it's not that clear-cut Chevalier told Oppenheimer about a conversation he had with an acquaintance, possibly a Soviet agent, who was interested in knowing if Oppenheimer would be willing to provide information.
And what did Oppenheimer do?
He immediately shut the conversation down.
Okay.
But he didn't report the incident right away.
Oh.
And when he finally did, he gave conflicting accounts of what happened.
I can see how that would raise red flags.
Yeah, was he trying to protect his friend, or was he covering something up?
Makes you question his judgment.
And that's exactly what the hearing focused on this incident, and they raised doubts about Oppenheimer's truthfulness and his judgment.
So did they find him guilty of espionage?
No, they didn't, but they did revoke his security clearance.
Effectively ending his career in government service.
Exactly.
And the decision was based more on the perception that he was a security risk.
Because of his past associations and the way he handled that Chevalier incident.
Wow, so it was guilt by association.
A classic example of how fear and suspicion can trump actual evidence.
A dark chapter in American history.
Yeah.
And Oppenheimer became a symbol of the dangers of political persecution during the Red Scare.
But even after this public humiliation and the end of his career, Oppenheimer didn't simply disappear. He continued to work as a physicist. He was teaching, he was writing.
It sounds like he was trying to reconcile his role in creating the atomic bomb with his growing moral concerns.
Absolutely. He was a complex figure, a brilliant mind wrestling with the weight of his actions and the implications of his discoveries.
A complex legacy to grapple with.
To understand that legacy fully, we need to explore other facets of his life, particularly his personal relationships and his impact on the world of science beyond the Manhattan Project.
Oppenheimer's story goes beyond just the science and the politics, though, right?
Yeah, the sources paint a picture of a man who was also deeply affected by his personal relationships, particularly his romance with Jean Tatlock.
They met in the 1930s when Oppenheimer was teaching at Berkeley.
They were both incredibly bright and passionate about literature and politics, drawn to unconventional ideas.
And Tatlock was a member of the Communist Party.
Right.
So their bond was intellectual as much as it was romantic.
They were both strong-willed individuals, and their intellectual and political debates often led to clashes.
It sounds like a tumultuous relationship.
It was a passionate, on-again, off-again affair for several years.
Tragically, Tatlock struggled with depression and took her own life in 1944.
It must have been devastating for Oppenheimer.
He was already married to Kitty Harrison by then.
He carried the weight of Tatlock's death for the rest of his life.
I can't even imagine the emotional toll.
And his marriage to Kitty, while full of love, was also marked by periods of intense conflict.
So personal tragedy just seems like a recurring theme in his life. It makes you wonder how these personal struggles might have influenced his views on the morality of the atomic bomb.
It's a fascinating question. He understood the fragility of life firsthand,
Right.
having experienced profound loss and emotional turmoil.
It adds another layer of complexity to his character.
Absolutely.
He wasn't just a detached scientist. He was a man wrestling with his own internal demons.
Trying to make sense of the world and his place in it.
But despite the controversies in the security hearing, Oppenheimer's contributions to science extend far beyond the Manhattan Project.
Oh, yeah. He made groundbreaking advancements in quantum mechanics, astrophysics, nuclear physics.
His work on neutron stars and black holes was revolutionary.
Revolutionary.
Can you explain black holes, though, a way that I can understand?
Sure.
I mean, they're not actually holes, are they?
You're right. They're not holes in the traditional sense. Imagine a region in space where gravity is so strong that nothing, not even light, can escape.
Okay.
Like a cosmic drain pulling everything in and trapping it forever. Oppenheimer's work helped us understand these enigmatic objects, paving the way for future discoveries.
It sounds like he was also a gifted teacher and mentor.
He was renowned for his teaching at Berkeley and Caltech. He had this unique ability to explain complex scientific ideas in a way that was both accessible and inspiring.
He shaped the minds of a whole generation of physicists.
He did.
So how should we remember Oppenheimer?
As a scientific genius.
A troubled moral figure.
An influential teacher.
Yeah. What stands out to you most about his legacy?
I think it's the tension between his brilliance and his flaws,
Yeah.
his scientific triumphs and his moral struggle.
He was a man of contradictions.
He was driven by a thirst for knowledge, but haunted by the consequences of his discoveries.
And his story seems so relevant today as we grapple with new technologies like artificial intelligence and gene editing.
Technologies with immense potential, but also potential risks.
It really makes you think about the responsibility that comes with scientific progress.
Oppenheimer's life serves as a cautionary tale, reminding us that we can't simply focus on the how of scientific advancements. We must also grapple with the why and the what if.
We need to consider the ethical implications of our work,
The potential consequences.
both intended and unintended.
Yes,
It's a lesson we can't afford to ignore.
we need to be mindful of the power we wield as we push the boundaries of scientific knowledge.
Oppenheimer's story challenges us to have those tough conversations, to think critically about the impact of our discoveries on humanity and the world around us.
It leaves us with so many questions.
Like what?
What is the role of scientists in society? How do we balance the pursuit of knowledge with the responsibility to use that knowledge wisely?
How do we prevent political pressures from hindering scientific progress or leading to injustice?
These are questions we all need to ponder.
As we navigate this increasingly complex world shaped by scientific advancements, I encourage you to continue exploring Oppenheimer's life and work
It's a journey that will challenge your assumptions.
and make you think differently about the intersection of science ethics and the human condition.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep diving deep.